Do you know why fear feels different when you're truly alone? When there are no houses, no streetlights, no distant traffic to remind you that help exists? Have you ever stood somewhere so empty that the dark didn't just surround you, but watched you back? Out in the wilderness, isolation isn't peaceful. It's a condition. And conditions change what people hear, what they believe, and what they're willing to do for one another. We all like to think compassion will save us. Sometimes it's the very thing that gets us killed. If stories about hidden rules, enforced silence, and things that where familiar faces speak to you, then you're already closer to the truth than most. Before we begin, support this account. Like the story so more people hear it. Subscribe if you want more confessions from places where authority doesn't mean safety. And leave a comment. Tell us how you think you'd react when the rules demand you turn away. My name is Evan Calder. I am a California Highway Patrol State Trooper, assigned to the Barstow Area Office, and I've been wearing this badge for 19 years. For the last decade, my primary jurisdiction has covered the eastern desert corridors bordering Death Valley National Park, including State Route 190, the Panamint Cutoffs, and a collection of unmaintained service roads that exist mostly so officials can say access is possible. People think of the CHP as traffic cops, speed traps, accidents, paperwork. What they don't understand is that in places like this, you are often the only law enforcement presence for dozens of miles, sometimes more. Out here, when someone calls for help, they aren't calling because they broke the law. They're calling because they are afraid they're going to disappear. Death Valley isn't empty. It's selective. During the day, it looks dead. Salt flats, scrub, rock. Heat shimmering so hard it bends the horizon. At night, the scale changes. The land opens up. Distances lie. Sounds arrive before their sources. You can see headlights 30 miles away and still feel completely alone. And there are stretches, long ones, where radios fade, GPS drifts, and the rules we enforce on paper stop meaning anything at all. The official explanation for most fatalities out here is exposure, dehydration, poor planning. That explanation covers a lot of ground. It just doesn't cover everything. There are other rules in this desert. They aren't written. They aren't acknowledged in reports. They're passed quietly, verbally, usually after someone doesn't come home. The first time you hear them, you laugh. The second time, you listen. The third time, it's because someone you knew is gone. The rules don't exist to prevent accidents. They exist to contain something that watches how we behave. I learned that in 2014, when Senior Trooper Miguel Alvarez vanished responding to a disabled vehicle near Eureka Dunes. Alvarez had 23 years on the job, 2 kids, a reputation for never leaving a call unresolved. The dispatch log shows he broke off from a coordinated response to check a sedan reported, just off the access road. He went in alone. He left his vehicle. He followed a voice calling for help. They found his cruiser the next morning. Engine cold. Driver's door closed. His body was never recovered. After that, the older guys started talking. Not officially. Never officially. They talked about cars that appeared without tracks. About voices that carried wrong. About situations that felt staged, like someone had arranged them just well enough to force you into making a choice. They talked about how the desert didn't just kill you. It tested you first. By the time this account truly begins, there were 6 rules I knew well enough to recite from memory. Rule 1. If a vehicle is off-road with no visible tire tracks, You do not approach it on foot. Rule 2. If you hear a voice before you see a person, you remain inside your vehicle. Rule 3. After sundown, you use only mounted lights. No handhelds. No phone lights. Rule 4. No solo responses after 11:30 p.m. without a confirmed second unit en route. Rule 5. If someone knows personal details you haven't disclosed, you disengage immediately. Rule 6. If a situation feels designed to rush you, it probably is. Those rules were learned the hard way, and they had already failed once. My first violation happened on July 18th, 2020. I don't like talking about that night, but if I don't, this warning doesn't mean anything. It was just before midnight when dispatch routed me a call tagged as a possible stranded motorist near Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes. The caller was a tourist from Oregon who claimed they'd seen headlights in the dunes themselves. Too far in, no visible access route. They said the lights blinked off when they slowed down. That alone should have been enough to escalate. It wasn't. We were understaffed. Wildfire season had pulled resources north, and the call was downgraded to a welfare check. I was the closest unit, 47 miles out. I acknowledged and rolled. When I arrived, the dunes were quiet. No wind, no insects. The kind of stillness that makes your ears ring. About a quarter mile off the paved access road, I saw it. An older model SUV, beige, half sunk into sand that showed no disturbance around it. No tracks, no footprints, no debris trail. I stopped my cruiser and cut the engine. Rule 1 says you don't approach. Rule 2 says you stay inside if you hear a voice. I did both, at first. CHP, I called over the PA. If anyone is inside the vehicle, make yourself visible. Nothing. I was about to radio dispatch to request a second unit when my radio crackled. Not with dispatch, but with open channel interference. A low hiss. Then a woman's voice, faint but clear. "Please," she said. "My son is hurt." She didn't sound panicked. She sounded tired. That's important. She said it again, and this time she said my first name. "Officer Calder, please. He's bleeding." I hadn't given my name. My hand hovered over the mic. My training told me to leave. My instincts told me this was exactly how Alvarez disappeared. But something else cut through all of that. The word son. I had a 7-year-old at home then. I pictured him alone in the dark, calling out to someone who chose rules over him. That's how it works. It doesn't challenge your courage. It challenges your identity. I broke Rule 1. I exited my cruiser. The moment my boots hit the sand, the temperature dropped. Not a breeze, just cold, like the air had decided something. I walked no more than 10 steps when the voice changed direction. It came from behind me now, closer. "He's right here," the woman said. "You can see him." I turned. The SUV's interior light was on. I could see a small shape in the back seat, a child-sized silhouette, slumped. My flashlight stayed holstered. Mounted lights only. That part, at least, I remembered. "Ma'am," I said, forcing my voice steady, "step out of the vehicle." The driver's door opened slowly. No one stepped out. The voice came again, this time from my left. "Why won't you help us?" I froze. In the dunes, sound shouldn't behave like that. There's nothing for it to bounce off of, nothing to carry it. And yet it moved, circling me, adjusting based on where I looked. That was when I realized something else. The child in the back seat wasn't moving, not breathing, not shifting, just there like a prop. My radio screamed to life with feedback so loud I dropped it, and underneath the noise, layered like a whisper beneath a shout, were other voices. Men, women, some calm, some crying. One of them laughed. I backed toward my cruiser without turning around. The SUV's headlights snapped on. They pointed directly at me. I don't remember getting back into my vehicle. I remember slamming the door. I remember the engine stalling twice before it turned over. I remember the headlights following me as I pulled away, tracking, not bouncing, as if mounted on something that understood distance. I didn't sleep for 36 hours after that. I filed a report that cited disorientation, possible auditory hallucination, and environmental factors. It was accepted without comment. No follow-up. No questions. That's how I knew they already knew. After that night, the rules felt heavier, not safer. Heavier, like carrying a weight you couldn't set down. Over the next year, the incidents multiplied. Vehicles appearing in dry lake beds with no access routes. Calls placed from dead zones that pinged towers they shouldn't reach. Voices over open channels that used names pulled from personnel files. Then it escalated. In March of 2022, Ranger Lisa Moreno, a close colleague I'd worked joint ops with for years, responded to a late-night call near Badwater Basin. The caller reported a child wandering barefoot on the salt flats. Dispatch confirmed a second unit en route. Lisa arrived first. She stayed in her vehicle. She followed the rules. The child approached her cruiser anyway. Security footage recovered from her dash cam showed a small figure walking out of the darkness, stopping just short of the headlights. The audio captured the child speaking in Lisa's voice. The footage ended when the cameras failed simultaneously. Lisa was found alive 2 miles away at dawn, barefoot, dehydrated, and unable to recognize anyone. She retired 6 months later. She still won't drive east. After that, we added another rule. We didn't number it. We didn't need to. Never trust anything that tries to close distance without permission. I'm telling you all this because what happened later, what's still happening, didn't start with some dramatic catastrophe. It started with small compromises, with good people choosing kindness in places where kindness was being studied. And it didn't stop at colleagues. It learned families mattered more. The first time it used my wife's voice came through my home phone at 2:14 a.m. while she was asleep beside me. That's where this truly becomes hard to carry, because once it knows who you love, the rules stop feeling like guidelines. They start feeling like betrayals. The call that used my wife's voice didn't ask for help. It asked me where I was. I didn't answer it. I sat there in bed, staring at the ceiling while the phone rang and rang, my heart trying to climb out of my throat. My wife, Claire, stirred beside me, mumbled something about work, and rolled over. Her phone was on the nightstand, silent, powered off like it always was overnight. The house was quiet, too quiet. No wind through the trees. No distant freeway noise. Just the phone, vibrating itself across the hardwood. When it stopped, I waited another full minute before picking it up. There was no voicemail, no missed call number, just a blank entry in the log, like the call had never existed. I didn't tell Claire about it. That was my first mistake. At work, I mentioned it carefully to Sergeant Hollis, who had been around long enough to know what questions not to ask. I didn't say my wife's name. I just said a familiar voice came through a line it shouldn't have. He didn't look surprised. "They're getting closer," he said. "That's all." I asked him what to do if it happened again. He hesitated. That was new. "If it's not on duty," he finally said, "you don't engage. You don't respond. And you don't bring it home." I almost laughed at that. Almost. Over the next few weeks, the calls didn't repeat, but the pressure did. More stranded vehicles. More welfare checks downgraded from priority responses because there simply weren't enough units. Administrative memos came down reminding us to exercise discretion and avoid unnecessary escalation in low-risk desert calls. Low risk. In April, I trained 2 new transfers from Los Angeles County. Good officers. Sharp. Both of them asked, independently, why so many of our desert reports ended with vague language and no photographs. I told them what I was allowed to tell them. Equipment failure. Environmental factors. Inconclusive scenes. They accepted that. At first. The rules aren't official, but patterns are hard to ignore. Vehicles that appeared without tracks clustered around certain corridors. Calls that used names pulled from DMV records. Incidents peaking during new moons, when the desert was at its darkest and sound carried the farthest. And then came May 6, 2022. That night, dispatch received 3 calls in under 10 minutes, all from the same stretch of dry lake bed south of Devil's Golf Course, all reporting a single vehicle driving in circles with its headlights off. 3 different callers. 3 different phone numbers. None of them could agree on the vehicle's color. I was already on patrol, and against my better judgment, I was closest. Dispatch confirmed a second unit, Trooper Jenna Klein, 5 minutes out. Rule 4 technically satisfied. I approached slow, lights off until the last half mile. The lake bed was open and flat, pale under starlight. No tire marks. No dust plume. Just emptiness. Then I saw it. A sedan, idling. Headlights dark. Engine sound steady, too steady, like a looped recording. It wasn't moving. I stopped at distance and stayed inside my cruiser. "CHP," I called out. "Turn your headlights on." They didn't. Instead, the dome light inside the sedan clicked on. There was a man in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, head forward. He looked wrong, too still, like someone holding a pose. Then he spoke, not through the PA, not through the radio, out loud. "You took a long time," he said, and he said it in Miguel Alvarez's voice. I felt my stomach drop. Alvarez had been gone 8 years. My radio crackled. Jenna's voice came through, tight. "I see it too. Do not approach." "Copy," I said, and meant it. The man in the sedan smiled. I could see it even from that distance. His mouth moved, but his eyes didn't. "Officer Calder," he said, "you left someone waiting once." My hands clenched around the steering wheel. Behind the sedan, something shifted. A second shape, low to the ground, like a person crouched too long and forgot how to stand. It moved in short bursts, stopping whenever I tried to focus on it. "Stay in the vehicle," Jenna said again, louder now. "Evan, stay in the vehicle." The man in the sedan turned his head toward her cruiser. "Oh," he said. "She's new." The crouched shape stood up. It was a child, or something shaped like one, barefoot, hair hanging in wet-looking strands. Its face was turned away from us. "Jenna," I said carefully, "do not engage. Do not exit." "I know the rules," she snapped. "I know." The child took one step toward her cruiser. "Mom," it said in a small, uncertain voice. Jenna sucked in a breath. "The word mom isn't supposed to carry out here. Not like that. It doesn't belong in salt flats and dead air." "I can hear it," she whispered. "I can hear it crying." "That's the point," I said. "Do not respond." The man in the sedan laughed. "You always tell them that," he said. "You never tell them how it feels." The child turned. Its face was wrong. Not distorted. Not monstrous. Just incomplete. Features smoothed like clay before it dries. Eyes suggested rather than formed. It raised an arm and pointed. Not at Jenna. At me. "You promised," it said, in my wife's voice. Something in me cracked then. Just a hairline fracture, but enough. I put my hand on the door handle before I realized what I was doing. Jenna saw it. "Evan," she said, panic breaking through her training, "don't." The sedan's engine revved. Headlights snapped on, blinding white, aimed directly at my cruiser. For a split second, I saw reflections inside the beams, more shapes than there should have been. Faces layered over faces. Mouths opening. I let go of the handle. I don't know if that saved me or damned me later. All I know is I stayed inside. Jenna didn't. She didn't open her door. She rolled her window down. Just a crack. That was enough. The sound changed instantly. The crying stopped. The engine cut. The night went dead silent, like someone flipped a switch. The child vanished. The sedan vanished. Jenna screamed. Her window shattered inward, not outward, like something pulled it apart from the edges. Her cruiser rocked once, hard, like something heavy leaned against it, and then nothing. When I got to her vehicle, her door was still closed. She was inside, shaking, hands over her ears, repeating one sentence over and over. "It said my name before I had it," she kept saying. "It said my name before I was born." She survived. Technically. She never returned to duty. She lives with her sister now, 2 states away, and still sleeps with the lights on. The incident was logged as a mass hallucination event triggered by environmental stressors. Both our body cams were corrupted. Dispatch records showed no third call. After that night, command started pushing back. Too many odd reports. Too many retirements. Too many transfers out. We were told, informally, to stop feeding rumors, to stick to protocol, to trust that exposure statistics explained the rest. But the rules were changing faster than the protocols. In June, a deputy from Inyo County broke down during a briefing and admitted he'd responded to a call from his deceased father. In July, a ranger shot at a voice in the dark that used her daughter's laugh. In August, a trooper followed a set of footprints that ended mid-step, like whoever made them simply stopped needing to touch the ground. The thing out there was learning. Not just names. Not just voices. Relationships. I started taking precautions at home. Unplugging phones at night. Teaching my son never to answer questions from unknown callers. Never to open the door unless both parents were present. Claire noticed. She asked questions. I told her it was work stress. That was my second mistake. Because the first time it used my son's voice, it didn't come through a phone. It came through the baby monitor. I was on shift when it happened. Claire called me, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. He woke up screaming, she said. He said you were standing in his room. He said you told him to be quiet. I was 40 miles away. When I got home, my son wouldn't look at me. He kept glancing toward the hallway, like he was afraid someone else might be there wearing my face. I didn't sleep in my own bedroom for a week. That's when I realized something we hadn't said out loud yet. The rules only worked at a distance. Once it closed that distance, once it moved from the desert into the idea of home, the rules stopped being barriers. They became choices. And sooner or later, someone always makes the wrong one. By late summer, I stopped pretending the rules would protect my family. They had never been designed for that. The rules were built to keep us alive out there, to give the thing in the desert boundaries to push against. They assumed separation, distance, the idea that you could clock out, drive home, and leave the wilderness behind you like dust on your boots. That assumption was wrong. I requested a transfer in September of 2022. Not out of the desert entirely. That request would have raised questions, but to a corridor closer to Baker, where response density was higher and nights were shorter. The request stalled in administrative review for 6 weeks. Staffing shortages. Operational necessity. The same language they used every time someone tried to put space between themselves and whatever was happening east of the park. Claire noticed the delay. "You're trying to get away from something," she said one night while we washed dishes. Not accusing, just tired. I told her part of the truth. I said the job had changed. I said I was seeing things I couldn't unsee. I did not tell her the desert knew our son's voice. That omission came back to haunt me. The first time I broke Rule 3, no personal lights after sundown, wasn't on duty. It was at home, at 11:47 p.m., when the power went out without warning. No storm, no wind, just sudden, total darkness. Claire froze. Our son, Noah, called out from his room down the hall. "Dad," he said, "why are you outside?" I turned on my phone light. That's when Claire screamed. The beam caught the end of the hallway mirror, the one angled toward Noah's room. In the reflection, I could see the front door. It was open, and standing just outside it, framed by porch darkness, was a shape that matched my height and posture perfectly. Same haircut, same stance, same tilt of the head I get when I'm listening. It raised a hand, not to wave, to knock. The power came back on all at once. Lights, AC, the house filled with noise. The reflection snapped back to normal. The door was closed and locked. Noah was crying. Claire couldn't stop shaking. I checked the perimeter. Nothing disturbed. No footprints. No camera alerts. That was the night I finally told her everything. About Alvarez. About the voices. About the rules. She didn't interrupt. She didn't argue. When I finished, she sat very still for a long time. Then she said, "So what do we do when it comes back?" Not if. When. I didn't have an answer. At work, the pattern continued tightening. Calls began referencing details pulled from internal rosters, shift assignments, partner names, badge numbers. Dispatch started receiving reports of stranded motorists who described responding units before they arrived. And then the calls started contradicting each other. Same voice, same number, different locations, minutes apart. We couldn't cover all of them. That was the point. The first fatality after Jenna happened on October 12, 2022. Deputy Aaron Wilkes, Inyo County Sheriff's Office. Married. One daughter, 8 years old. He responded to a call near Owens Lake. Report of a pickup truck with its hazards on, occupant waving from the bed. His partner was diverted en route. Wilkes waited 7 minutes, then exited his vehicle when the occupant started screaming his daughter's name. He was found the next morning, half a mile from his cruiser, barefoot and disoriented, with severe internal injuries and no external trauma. He died in the hospital without regaining consciousness. The pickup was gone. That night, we quietly added another rule. If it uses a loved one's name, it is not a coincidence. The administration didn't like that rule. They didn't like any of them. Too superstitious. Too informal. Too difficult to defend if someone asked why a trooper failed to render aid. But nobody formally challenged us. Not after Wilkes. By November, we were exhausted. Enforcement fatigue isn't dramatic. It's not panic or hysteria. It's a slow erosion of vigilance. You hesitate half a second longer. You rationalize small deviations. You tell yourself this one is probably normal. That's when it gets you. The second time I violated a rule for compassion happened on November 27th, 2 days after Thanksgiving. I was on patrol when dispatch flagged a 911 call routed through a tower it shouldn't have been able to hit. Caller ID was blocked. The voice was male, breathless, claiming his wife had gone into labor on a closed service road near Ash Meadows. I knew the road. It hadn't been accessible in years. I requested confirmation. Dispatch tried to call back. The line rang once. Then a woman screamed. "Please," the man said. "She's dying. I can hear her." I checked the time. 11:12 p.m. Rule 4 said wait for a second unit. Dispatch said none were immediately available. I should have disengaged. Instead, I asked him his name. He told me. It was a real person. DMV record. Address in Pahrump. No criminal history. Married 3 years. Wife pregnant. That detail mattered. I responded. The service road was exactly as I remembered. Washed out, narrow, barely passable even with four-wheel drive. My cruiser shouldn't have made it as far as it did. And then, around a bend that shouldn't have been there, I saw headlights. A sedan. Parked. Hazard lights blinking. Tire tracks led to it. That's what convinced me. I parked at distance and stayed inside, heart pounding. "CHP," I called out. "Show me your hands." A man stepped into the light. Mid-30s. Hands raised. Face streaked with sweat and dust. He looked terrified. "My wife's in the back," he said. "She collapsed. Please." I scanned the area. Nothing felt wrong. No silence shift. No sound distortion. Just the desert and a scared man. I exited my vehicle. The moment my boots hit the ground, the hazard lights stopped blinking. The woman in the back seat moaned. She looked real. Too real. Pale. Eyes glassy. Hands clutching her abdomen. "I can't feel my legs," she whispered. I moved closer. The man reached for me. I pulled back. "Don't." He froze. "Sir," I said, forcing calm, "step away from the vehicle." He did. That's when I noticed the absence. No insects. No wind. No echo. And then the woman opened her eyes and looked directly at me. "Evan," she said. My vision tunneled. Behind her, through the rear window, the desert was no longer empty. Shapes stood just beyond the reach of my headlights. Tall. Patient. Watching. The man smiled. "I told you she was dying," he said. "You always come when someone's dying." I ran. I didn't look back. I dove into my cruiser, gunned the engine, and didn't stop until I hit pavement. My hands shook so badly I had to pull over. When I filed the report, the DMV record I'd checked no longer existed. The name returned nothing. The address was an empty lot. 2 weeks later, a woman actually went into labor on that same stretch of highway, legitimately stranded, no cell service. She and the baby survived. I arrived too late. That's how it punishes you. At home, Noah stopped sleeping through the night. He told Claire there was a man who stood outside his window and practiced talking like me. He said the man messed up sometimes. Got my laugh wrong. Got my breathing wrong. Claire wanted to leave. Take Noah to her sisters in San Diego. I told her no. That was my third mistake. Because deep down, I knew something she didn't. Distance wasn't protection anymore. By December, we started hearing about similar incidents outside our region. Nevada Highway Patrol, Arizona DPS, even a federal park ranger in Utah who resigned after responding to a car that appeared in a canyon with no access points. Different landscapes, same behaviors, same rules, whispered in different accents. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't local, and it wasn't finished learning us. The last call of that year came in on Christmas Eve. The caller ID showed my own number. I didn't answer the call. That's the first thing you should understand about Christmas Eve. The caller ID showed my own number. I didn't answer the call. That's the first thing you should understand about Christmas Eve. The phone lit up on the dash with my own number, same prefix, same last four, and I let it ring until it stopped. I didn't look at the screen after that. I didn't check the log. I focused on the road and kept driving east, farther into the dark than I'd planned to go that night. Dispatch never mentioned the call. That mattered. By then, I knew the difference between what it could do and what the system would acknowledge. When dispatch stayed quiet, it meant either they didn't see it, or they didn't want to. Neither option was comforting. The desert was colder than it should have been. Frost clung to scrub where it didn't belong. My headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the dark, and beyond that tunnel, I could feel things watching. Not moving, not approaching, just waiting, like they knew time was on their side. I turned off onto a maintenance spur I hadn't used in years. No calls, no reason, just instinct. I parked, shut down the engine, and sat there in silence, counting my breaths until my hands stopped shaking. That was when the knocking started. Not on the cruiser. On the inside of my skull. I don't have a better way to describe it. A pressure, rhythmic and patient, like someone tapping from the other side of a wall that wasn't supposed to exist. "You didn't answer," a voice said. "Not aloud, not exactly. That was rude." I pressed my palms against my temples and squeezed my eyes shut. "Not real," I whispered. "Not engaging." The pressure eased. That was new. Up until then, resistance hadn't mattered. Fear, calm, logic. It all felt the same to whatever was out there. But this time, something shifted. Like it had noticed I was learning. That terrified me more than the voices. I went home just before dawn. Claire was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with Noah's dinosaur pajamas folded in front of her like evidence. "He didn't sleep," she said quietly. "Neither did I. I poured coffee I didn't drink. He says the man came back," she continued. "The one who practices being you." I didn't respond. "He stood across the street this time," she said. "Didn't move. Just watched the house. Noah says he waved." I closed my eyes. "What did you do?" I asked. "I closed the curtains," she said. "I didn't open the door. I didn't say anything." She looked at me then. Really looked. "And it went away," she finished. That was when I realized the most dangerous lie we'd been telling ourselves. The rules weren't about authority. They were about denial. Don't approach. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge. The rules weren't defenses. They were starvation tactics. You didn't fight it. You didn't reason with it. You let it waste energy trying to make you care. At work, that understanding didn't make things easier. In January, a memo came down requesting increased engagement and visibility along desert corridors due to public complaints. Too many abandoned vehicles. Too many delayed responses. Too many unanswered calls. Someone upstairs wanted metrics. They didn't want stories. We pushed back quietly. Shift supervisors rearranged patrols. Senior officers forgot to relay certain calls. Dispatchers started flagging specific phrases. Off-road, no tracks, knows my name, and rerouting them through layers of delay. It wasn't official. It was survival. That lasted until February 9th, 2023. That was the night the system broke. At 10:58 p.m., dispatch received simultaneous calls from 4 different locations across a 60-mile radius. All reported the same thing: a white SUV with its hazards on, occupants signaling for help. 4 calls. 1 vehicle. We didn't have the manpower to respond to all of them. Command ordered a coordinated response. Split units, cover ground, assess legitimacy. I argued. I said this was exactly what we'd been warned about. Engineered overload. Forced choices. I was told to follow orders. I took the southernmost call, near Saratoga Springs. Trooper Luis Ortega took the northern. A deputy from Nye County took the west. The east call went unanswered. I arrived first. The SUV was there. White. Parked just off the road. Hazard lights blinking. Tire tracks visible. Fresh. Messy. Human. I stayed in my cruiser. "CHP," I called out. "Show me your hands." A man stepped into the light. Luis's voice came over the radio, tight. "I have visual too. Same vehicle. Same setup." My blood ran cold. "Luis," I said slowly, "describe what you see." There was a pause. "White SUV," he said. Hazards on. Man standing by the driver's door. Female passenger. The man in front of me smiled. "You always want details," he said. "That's why you last so long." Behind him, the rear door opened. A woman stepped out. She looked like Claire. Not a perfect match. Close enough to hurt. I couldn't breathe. "Evan," Louise said, panic rising now. The woman just looked at me. "She knows my name." "Do not exit," I said. "Do not engage." The woman, my wife's face, tilted her head. "Noah's alone," she said softly. "He's scared." I screamed into the radio for command to abort, for everyone to pull back, for someone, anyone, to listen. Static answered me. The man stepped closer to my cruiser. He placed a hand on the hood. It left a print. Not a handprint. An impression. Like pressure without shape. "Pick one," he said. "You can't have all of us." Louise shouted. "Evan, she's at my window." A gunshot cracked through the radio. Then silence. I put the cruiser in reverse and floored it. That decision will haunt me for the rest of my life. Luis Ortega was found the next morning, alive, sitting in his cruiser, hands folded in his lap, eyes open. He hasn't spoken since. The deputy from Nye County never responded again. His cruiser was located abandoned, engine running, doors open. No sign of him. The SUV was nowhere. The East call, the one we didn't answer, turned out to be real. A family stranded with a blown radiator. 2 children. The youngest died of exposure before sunrise. That's how it wins. Not by killing everyone. By making sure every choice costs you something you can't get back. After that night, the rules changed again. Not formally. Not all at once. We stopped responding to certain calls entirely. If a vehicle appeared where it shouldn't, we logged it and let it sit. If a voice used a name, we cut the line. If something looked staged, we treated it as hostile. Public complaints skyrocketed. Internal Affairs opened inquiries. A reporter from Bakersfield started asking about response gaps. Command called it a morale issue. They were wrong. It was an extinction-level fatigue. At home, Claire packed bags. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "I won't let Noah grow up thinking his father might be standing outside his window." I didn't argue. I helped her load the car. I hugged Noah so tight he complained. I watched them drive west, toward lights and people and noise. The house felt wrong without them. Too big. Too quiet. That night, alone, I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow. Familiar. I didn't check. I sat in the dark and recited the rules under my breath like a prayer. Outside, something sighed. "See," it said gently. "You're learning." After Claire and Noah left, the house stopped pretending it was a refuge. It didn't feel haunted. That's the wrong word. Haunted implies something stuck, something bound to a place. This wasn't bound. It was visiting, checking in, making sure the vacancy hurt. I stayed because leaving felt like surrender, and because a part of me, one I don't like admitting exists, believed that if I stayed, it would keep focusing on me instead of following my family. That's not bravery. That's bargaining. At work, the fallout from February 9th kept spreading. Internal Affairs requested statements. Command asked us to recontextualize our language. Phrases like appeared without tracks and voice mimicry were flagged as non-actionable and removed from official templates. We were told to stick to observable facts. The problem was, the observable facts no longer behaved. Vehicles showed up on satellite imagery that hadn't been there 12 hours earlier. Calls logged from coordinates that overlapped. Physically impossible unless the caller existed in more than one place at once. Dash cams recorded audio without corresponding video, or video without audio, like the system itself couldn't decide what was real. And then there were the names. In March, dispatch received a call from someone identifying himself as Officer Daniel Sue, the trooper who vanished in 2016. The voice used his badge number correctly. It asked for a status update on a case that had been closed for years. The dispatcher froze. She was new. Didn't know the history. A supervisor took the call off her console and terminated it. That supervisor put in for medical leave the next day and never came back. We started cross-checking notes with agencies outside California. Quietly. Off-record. Phone calls made from personal devices, not logged lines. Nevada. Arizona. Utah. Even New Mexico. Different terrain. Same rules. In Arizona, a DPS trooper told me about a stretch of desert near Organ Pipe where Border Patrol had their own unofficial prohibitions. No foot pursuit after dusk. No responding to lone figures waving from arroyos. No answering radios that used a specific cadence. They say it's smugglers, he told me. But smugglers don't call you by your childhood nickname. In Utah, a park ranger described a car that appeared in a canyon with no road access, its occupants singing hymns in voices that didn't match their mouths. In Nevada, a highway crew refused to service a rest stop after sundown because the emergency call box kept ringing by itself. None of it was documented. All of it was consistent. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't adapting to one jurisdiction. It was adapting to us. By April, enforcement fatigue turned into something darker, resignation. You could see it in the way officers lingered in their vehicles before responding, or how long they stared at their radios before keying up. The rules had multiplied, too many to keep straight under pressure. Rule conflicts became common. If a call used a loved one's voice but involved a real, verifiable person, which rule took priority? If a vehicle had tracks but the caller knew classified details, did you approach? If command ordered engagement, were you allowed to refuse? There were no good answers. The first outright refusal happened on April 22, 2023. A multi-unit response was ordered for a reported bus breakdown near Dante's View. Tour group, elderly passengers, possible medical emergency. The call came through clean. GPS pinged correctly. No red flags. Except the bus didn't exist. 3 units arrived from different directions. All 3 reported seeing the bus. All 3 described it differently. One said white. One said blue. One said yellow school bus. None of them approached. Command demanded engagement. All 3 units disengaged anyway. That was the night command lost control. Disciplinary threats followed. Mandatory counseling. Wellness checks. Officers were pulled off desert assignments and replaced with transfers who didn't know the rules yet. That got people killed. In May, a newly transferred trooper named Eli Park responded to a dusk call near Saline Valley. Report of a family sedan stuck in soft sand. toddler inside. He exited his vehicle immediately. His body was found 2 days later, a mile from where his cruiser sat. No visible injuries. Autopsy inconclusive. Cause of death listed as cardiac arrest. The family sedan was real. They survived. That's another tactic it uses, letting some people live. It muddies the pattern, gives administrators something to point to when they want to deny what's happening. See, not every call is dangerous. You're overreacting. By then, I was barely sleeping. When I did, I dreamed of radios whispering my name from empty rooms, of headlights turning on behind my eyes, of Noah standing in the desert, calling for me, his voice echoing wrong. Claire called once a week, always during the day, always from different numbers. She said San Diego felt safer, crowded, loud. But Noah had started asking why people who looked like me stood across the street at night. I told her to keep the curtains closed. I told her not to engage. I hated myself for how easily the words came. In early June I was asked, informally, to help train a small group of supervisors on anomalous desert response patterns. The request didn't come with paperwork. It came as a quiet conversation in a hallway. They wanted to understand what was happening without acknowledging it officially. That meeting changed everything. There were 8 of us in the room. CHP, Inyo County, NPS. One liaison from Nevada who didn't give his last name. No phones. No recording devices. We shared timelines, mapped incidents, compared rules. The overlap was undeniable. Older than any one department. Older than some of the roads. One ranger mentioned indigenous stories, entities that waited along travel routes, testing travelers by imitation, not predators in the animal sense, more like auditors, things that measured how humans responded to need. Another trooper brought up Cold War-era memos about psychological anomalies along desert missile corridors, vehicles appearing near test ranges, voices on secure lines, different eras, same behavior. It learns faster now, someone said. Technology helps it. That line stuck with me, because technology also helped us. For the first time, we considered containment, not stopping it, not defeating it, but slowing its spread. Shared phrases to flag, signal distortions to watch for, times of night when engagement risk spiked. We knew it wouldn't last. Something that old doesn't get fooled forever. The retaliation came sooner than expected. On June 19th, dispatch received a call from a landline in Barstow, a number that hadn't been active in years. The caller reported a CHP cruiser overturned off Route 178, officer trapped inside. The officer's name given was mine. I was on shift, in my vehicle, alive. Command froze. Then my radio keyed itself. Not a hot mic. Not interference. A deliberate transmission. "Help me," my voice said. "I'm stuck. I can't feel my legs." Every unit in range heard it. I didn't move. I couldn't, because the voice added something new, something it had never done before. "Please," it said. "Noah's here." I broke then, not outwardly, not screaming or crying. Internally, something fundamental cracked, not fear, but certainty. The certainty that I could keep this contained by sacrificing myself. That as long as I followed the rules perfectly, the damage would stay limited. That belief died. I keyed my mic. Disregard all transmissions using my identifier, I said. This is hostile mimicry. Do not respond. Command ordered me to stand down. I didn't. I drove. Not toward the reported location. Away from it. Toward a stretch of desert we'd quietly labeled null ground. Areas with historically low incident density. Places it seemed to avoid, for reasons we didn't understand. Halfway there, my phone rang. Claire's number. I answered before I could stop myself. "Evan," she said, breathless. "He's gone. Noah's gone." The world narrowed to a single point. "What do you mean, gone?" I demanded. "There was someone at the door," she said. "He sounded like you. I didn't open it, I swear I didn't. But Noah thought it was you. He unlocked the chain. I was right there." I turned the cruiser around so hard the tires screamed. "Claire," I said, forcing my voice steady, "listen to me. Do not leave the house. Do not follow. Call the police." She sobbed. "He left footprints," she said. "They go down the street. There are 2 sets. One small. One yours." I violated more rules in that moment than I can count. Speed. Jurisdiction. Command authority. I drove west like the desert was on fire behind me. I didn't make it in time. The San Diego Police Department found Noah 3 blocks away, standing on a sidewalk, holding hands with no one, calm, uninjured. He told them his dad had come to get him. When I arrived, he looked at me with confusion instead of fear. "You're late," he said. That night broke something in him. He stopped calling me Dad. He calls me Evan now. Claire doesn't sleep in the same room as me when I visit. She believes me. That's the worst part, because belief doesn't undo damage. After that, the rules stopped being enough. Containment started failing. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough. And once something like this learns, it can reach your children. It never forgets to be why the time you hear this, I may already be retired, or dead, or still out there, doing the same thing I've been doing for years, enforcing rules that were never meant to save us, only to slow something down long enough that the rest of the world doesn't notice it's bleeding through. After Noah was found, after San Diego PD closed the incident as a misidentification involving stress, after Claire stopped asking me to explain anything anymore, I returned to duty because I didn't know who I was without the rules, and because stepping away wouldn't make this stop. It never does. Command reassigned me back east within a month. Quietly. No paperwork trail that made sense. Just a verbal order and a look that said you know why. The desert hadn't changed. That was the worst part. Same roads. Same stars. Same black distances that make you feel like the earth is listening. Whatever escalation we'd experienced hadn't burned the place out or revealed anything new to the casual eye. Tourists still broke down. Hikers still vanished. People still blamed heat and bad luck. But we knew better now. The thing didn't need to rush anymore. It had proof of concept. The informal containment group dissolved by late summer. Too much attention. Too many cross-agency emails that couldn't be officially justified. The Nevada liaison stopped answering calls. The Utah Ranger resigned. 2 supervisors transferred inland. Institutional denial didn't arrive as an announcement. It arrived as silence. Calls that once would have been quietly flagged were now routed normally. New troopers were assigned without warning. Rules stopped being passed down because there was no one left willing to be responsible for them. And still, the incidents continued. In August of 2023, a tour bus broke down near Zabriskie Point at dusk. Perfectly legitimate. 50 people. Working cell phones. Clear GPS, CHP, and NPS responded together. No voices. No names. No mimicry. Just a normal emergency. Everyone survived. 2 nights later, a sedan appeared in the same turnout. Same orientation. Same hazards blinking. No tracks. No response was dispatched. That sedan stayed there for 3 days. By the 4th morning, it was gone. That's how the normalization sets in. You stop reacting to the wrong things because reacting costs too much, and you can't afford to be wrong all the time. So you choose what you can explain, and you let the rest rot in place. I tried to live inside that compromise. I failed. The last major incident I'm going to talk about happened on October 2nd, 2023. At 12:41 a.m. dispatch received a call from a payphone that no longer exists. Reported location: a rest stop that had been closed for renovations since 2019. The caller didn't ask for help. He asked for me. By name. Full name. Rank. Years of service. He said he had something that belonged to me. I requested a trace. Dispatch couldn't even see the line. Command told me to stand down. I didn't. Some habits don't break cleanly. I drove to the rest stop alone. That was a violation, not just of the rules, but of everything we'd learned. I justified it the same way everyone always does. If I don't go, someone else will. The rest stop was exactly as it should have been. Barricades, darkened bathrooms, no power. The desert around it felt attentive, like the land itself had leaned in. I stayed in my cruiser. I did not call out. A figure stepped into my headlights anyway. Adult male. Average build. Hands empty. He walked with my gait again. Had refined it since the porch incident. Less exaggeration. More confidence. You look tired, he said in my voice, but quieter. Closer to how it sounds in my own head. What do you want? I asked. To give you something back, he said. He gestured behind him. A second figure emerged from the dark, child-sized. My heart stopped. But it wasn't Noah. Not exactly. It looked like Noah might have in 5 years. Older. Thinner. Eyes too serious. It stood there silently. I don't have your son, the man said, anticipating the thought. Not yet. This is just a possibility. I tasted blood. I'd bitten my tongue without realizing it. You said you had something of mine, I said. He nodded. Your certainty, he said. You dropped it back there. The child took a step forward. I did not exit the vehicle. I did not speak. I stared straight ahead and recited the rules in my head like a dead language. Rule 1. Rule 2. Rule 3. The man sighed. You're no fun anymore, he said. The others were easier. The child looked at me then and smiled. Not threatening, not cruel, just patient. Then both of them stepped backward, away from the light, away from me. and dissolved into the dark like they'd never been solid at all. No wind, no sound, no tracks, just absence. I sat there until dawn. When I finally drove away, my reflection in the windshield didn't feel like mine anymore. Something about it lagged half a second behind my movements. That's when I knew I was done. Not because I'd won, because I hadn't lost yet, and that meant it was still deciding what to do with me. I retired 3 months later. Early, quiet, no ceremony. Claire and I are separated now, not officially, but in every way that matters. Noah is in therapy. He doesn't talk about the man who sounded like me anymore, but sometimes he asks questions no child should know how to form, like whether rules stop working if too many people know them, or whether something can follow you just by being remembered. I don't patrol anymore, but I still get calls. Voicemails with no audio. Missed calls from numbers that don't exist. Once, a text that just said you forgot Rule 7. There is no Rule 7. That's the lie. The truth, the part I'm not supposed to say out loud, is this. The rules don't stop it. They never did. They slow it down. They confuse it. They force it to spend time and effort figuring out how to make you break them. And most of the time, that's enough. Most of the time. But enforcement fatigue is real. Compassion is predictable. Love is exploitable. And eventually, someone always answers the call they shouldn't. Maybe it'll be a trooper. Maybe a ranger. Maybe you, stranded on a road that looks wrong in the dark. If that happens, remember this. If a car appears where it couldn't have driven, do not approach it. If you hear a voice before you see a person, stay where you are. If something knows your name without being told, leave. If it uses the voice of someone you love, it is already too close. And if you ever feel like the situation is designed to rush you, it is. I'm telling you this because the rules are being forgotten, and because now that you've heard them, you're part of the system too. It doesn't like witnesses. It likes participants. And sooner or later, someone breaks. The only question is whether it's you, or someone you die to save.